Okay.
Hi, Deepak. Thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Deepak, and I am an engineer for a data privacy-based startup here in San Francisco. Uh, and I have been interested in space since I was like really young. In fact, like one of my first dreams is like, most 4 or 5 year olds have is like, okay, I want to be like a pilot. I want to be like a test pilot. I want to be like an astronaut and stuff like that. And that's what led me to choosing science as I grew up. So I'm like really passionate about science and like space stuff in general as well. Yeah, that's about me.
Do you remember how you first became aware of the existence of test pilots in space and that type of thing?
Yeah, it's I don't exactly remember like the exact moment that something this happened, but like as I started like reading more and more advanced books, I mean not advanced books, like slightly more complicated stuff, like growing up, you would come across things like, okay, like how exactly would they even test things like the space shuttle, or like for example the space shuttle program was like a huge deal in like the 80s and the 90s, right? And then like I was born in the 90s, so like growing up there was like a lot of talk about like how there's all these like space shuttle missions, especially that the US was taking on. And then when you would actually read about how they would test the space shuttles and stuff like that, when you see photos of them like towing the space shuttle on top of like a huge jumbo jet, like when you read about all that sort of stuff, like inevitably you like come across mentions about, okay, like test pilots would be like actually take the space shuttle up and like bring them down like air force bases and stuff like that all across the US, or like in a specific part of the US. So I feel like that's where I got the idea of like test pilots, but I can't remember exactly like where I got the idea from. All I know is that I've been exposed to it as like a lot, and ever since I was a kid. So yeah, I've known about it for a while. So, yeah.
But that's awesome. And were you kind of was this an interest that only you had, or did like your peers and other people also interested in such things?
I would say it was mostly because of the fact that like my dad was really interested in, or like is really interested in this kind of stuff. So like he would, I wouldn't say he would push me, but like we would like watch things like we would watch movies and stuff like that, and we watched like a lot of like sci-fi and like action adventure movies growing up as a kid. So that was like one path along which I was really interested in like planes and just like aviation and like even like space related stuff in general. So that was like one source of interest, and there were like a few of my friends growing up who were interested in like in the same things as me, but I would say like the bulk of the impetus came from the fact that at home we just have we just like watch all these different movies, and then like that's how I got just more and more interested. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting that your parents' interest also became sort of something you've been interested in. I know that in some cases, uh, if a parent's really interested in something, the kids sometimes aren't interested in that for the very reason their parents are.
Yeah. I mean, it's my parents weren't like pushing these things on me. It's just that when we'd watch something, for example, like one thing that I vividly remember was the fact that maybe this is not appropriate for me to watch, but like there was like this James Bond movie called Moonraker, in which like Bond is like there's like a villain who's like basically trying to send like some sort of missile or something to like take over some sort of like satellite or something in orbit. So that was like a vivid thing that I remember from my childhood, because I was like, wow, this actually seems pretty intense. And like it was things like that. Like my parents never forced me into it. It's just that they would just like watch the same stuff, and then like if I mentioned something to them, they would just be like, okay, fine, you know what, you can go, like we'll go buy you a book that explains this exact same thing, or like we can watch more stuff that's like something of the sort. So I wouldn't say they spend a lot of time just like drilling it into my head, but just that they would just like expose this to me as and when I said stuff about it to them. So yeah, I get a point. But I feel like a lot of my friends were the same way. So yeah, they would just like avoid things that their parents were like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it.
So you had this interest in being a test pilot and engineering, but now you do something completely different. You work in IT privacy startup.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess what happened along the way that kept you from kind of pursuing that initial interest? Like,
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I sometimes think about it myself, but I just feel like growing up in the situations that I grew up in, like I didn't grow up in the US, right? Like I grew up in UAE. So over there, like the kind of opportunities that are afforded to me as a kid were like, for example, if I had to become a test pilot or even just become a pilot in general, I would have to enroll for the National Defense Academy in India, which is like basically like part of like the Indian Navy. So that was like one avenue for me. And there's like, if you just want to become like a commercial pilot, it's like it's a whole other process. It's just not as accessible here. I mean, there as it is over here. Like for example, right now I'm training to become a private pilot as well over here. And it's like so much easier over here because I can just like walk up into an airport and just be like, hey, I just want to like start learning how to fly something, and then it's that easy. So I feel like a lot of it just came down to the fact that a few of these opportunities are like pathways were just not available to me back then. And more importantly, like the things that were available to me, I was just very interested in like computer science and programming. Like, I think my first programming class was like in grade 8. And I remember just like, okay, this is incredible as well. Like, I'm really intrigued by it. And then, in like 10th and 11th grade, as I started learning more about computer science and programming, I found that this is something that I'm really interested and really good at as well. So I just chose that path. But yeah, I mean, I've always had this like dream about like in the back of my mind that, okay, I do want to get into aviation. And like, that's why when I came over here, I saw that it was like much easier to get into. So that's what I'm currently doing as well. Yeah.
How far along in your flight training are you?
Yeah, I'm at the pre-solo stage. Like I'm just about to take my phase check. So yeah, I'm starting to like go solo basically. So yeah.
The first planes were single pilot planes.
Yeah. It's pretty scary. And then like when you actually see the model airplanes for like the first airplanes, I'm just like, that is so unsafe. Like even just from like 20 years ago, I take a look at some, I mean not 20 years ago, but like planes from like really long time back as well. I'm just like, okay, this seems so much more difficult than it's like a 172 or whatever, right? It's incredible like how far along, I think just like in 110 years that we've come along as a species, that we have like, it's pretty safe right now. You can just like get in an aircraft. It's pretty hard for it to like, crash unless you do something like really bad or something. So it's incredible just the stuff out of advance. Yeah.
So what are you flying?
What am I flying right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm learning on a 172. So yeah, it's like a 172 with like a G1000. Yeah.
The glass display and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I started off with a 6-pack, but it's just that I went away for like a 1-month break, and then when I came back, my school had just like replaced everything with like G1000s. I actually really like flying with the 6-pack, but yeah, I just had no option. So yeah, I mean, I think my Masi said that you were also interested, like you also have a private pilot's license as well.
Well, I've done about 20 hours of flying.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
spots. I've not done a solo yet.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like I haven't mastered my landings. Until I do that, I don't want to to be alone in the plane.
Yeah. Do you fly out of like David Wayne Hook or something?
Yeah, that's where I used to fly from. Right now, I'm not flying, but I like to get back into it.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Like, yeah, landings are definitely difficult. I feel like I'm not completely there yet, but like I'm pretty close to it for sure. Yeah, it's just so much fun. Yeah.
But you mentioned that you grew up in the UAE, and you really didn't have any avenues available for you to pursue your interests.
Yeah.
But you came over here, and a lot of things that would have been difficult for you to do in UAE are a lot easier for you to do. One thing I have noticed is it seems like that a lot of people who were born here don't realize the opportunities they have available to them.
Yeah. That's something I've noticed as well. Yes. And I don't know like why exactly this is, but I just feel like, yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's either like a information dissemination problem, or like some sort of like way that people just don't realize like how I wouldn't say like, yeah, like how easy things are, like how accessible things are. So that could be like one reason. It's just that, just not doing things like spread the information that things like this are available and like more accessible. But it's also the fact that, like I feel like back in the day when I was growing up, it was just like, okay, I didn't realize that I didn't have these pathways available, but just at the time, like, just like okay, especially the way that it works in Indian families is that, okay, there's always like a preset part to do certain things. And then if you don't fit in those parameters, it's like, it's hard for you to like deviate, or at least like that's how it's portrayed. And then like once you step out and like, once you're actually doing things out in the world, then I feel like it's a lot easier to just like, okay, like go back and re-examine your decisions. Because that's basically what I ended up doing. I just like, okay, I thought about it again, like once I've done it, okay. Or like once I had a job or whatever, that, okay, like what could I've done differently? What do I want to do right now? Because I've reached a certain point in my life and my career where I'm like, okay, I'm really good at what I do right now, but what if I want to do something else and like have this be like, don't let like one thing define me and my career for the rest of my life. So I feel like that was also like something that pushed me to like looking into something like, general aviation, for example. And yeah, I just feel like it's like a multifaceted thing. It's I feel like it's hard to just pinpoint one single problem. So yeah.
And so, before we started recording, you were talking about Blue Origin, sending people to space, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, and what other things that are going on right now that have come to your attention in terms of space?
Yeah. It was the most recent thing was this, like, but like Blue Origin was like, okay, we're going to take on like another flight, and this time it's not just going to be like, William Shatner and just like Jeff Bezos. They're going to take on like more people, where they just want like 10 to 15 pilots as well. But the most interesting thing that I came across over the last couple of months is the fact that Virgin Galactic, for example, I think they moved forward their launch date just so that they could claim to be the first, like, or like the second company up in space before like Blue Origin, even though they didn't actually have like a reusable lander or like even like reusable engines or whatever. So I found that pretty interesting because of the fact that I feel like even something like this, which has the capability to like do so much good and which can be applied in so many different ways, is still like sort of there's still like some very strong capitalist roots in there, and it's really interesting for me to see like how the space has develops, because even though like Virgin Galactic got there first, I mean after SpaceX obviously, it's just like Blue Origin seems to be like better on track to actually do what it promised, even if it is it just seems like a personal vanity project. So I feel like that's one thing that I've heard about. But the other thing is like I've also sort of been keeping tabs on like the European space agencies, like are like, I don't know how to say it, like is it like Ariane or like Ariane or something? Like they have like the Ariane 6 booster as well, right? So we heard about that as well. And like India's been trying to send up like a mission for like a couple of years now. I think they had like the Chandrayaan 2 mission like 2020. So it seems like a lot of different countries are like sort of entering the reusable space age, where it's like they don't want to like go there and come back. They want to like go there and stay there. And yeah, obviously the space launch system is also something that I think everyone in like the space community has heard about, being cost overruns and stuff like that. So there's like a lot of interesting stuff going on right now. I'm not sure if you had like one thing in mind, but yeah.
I was just curious in what was making it out there,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's just like I just like read stuff on like on like random blogs that I find. So just like just like snippets of information, not a lot of information, but snippets of stuff. Yeah.
And so, that speech that John F. Kennedy gave, we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Yeah.
This is the 60th year anniversary of that speech.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. It's surprising. Okay. That seems actually longer than I thought. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like it was a lot, the time was like a lot shorter, but okay. That's pretty cool.
And based upon, I mean, do you know the last time that we actually went to the moon?
I don't actually. Yeah, I don't actually know when was the last time that that humans were on the moon. I feel like it was like with the Apollo missions, they stopped, right? They never went back. Yeah. I think Apollo 13 was the last one.
17 actually.
Oh, 17. Okay, yeah, my bad. Yeah, okay.
Any guesses on approximately when that is? Like,
wait, so when Apollo 17 was?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like the Apollo missions were like 60s and 70s, and like so I'm assuming it was like 74, 75, 1974, 1975, somewhere around then.
I mean, awesome guess. The actual date is 1972, but
that is,
that is, Very, very close.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Um, so
Yeah.
what do you think of, I mean, I guess first of all, what do you think about the Apollo program and us going to the moon? I mean, where does that fit in sort of your um, understanding of like the development of humanity and civilization? And like, I mean, are you sad that you missed it? Are you sad it's not happening now? Do you feel like, yo, well, that's cool, so what? I mean, like,
Yeah,
how do you think
yeah.
about it?
Sorry. I feel like I feel like right now is a great time to be alive, or maybe like, even 10 years from now or something. Because it's just gonna be like space is just gonna be like so much more accessible because we know so much more about how to like, send things up there and keep them there, and more importantly, like, how to protect ourselves when we are there. Like, especially when you hear about all these different studies that have been happening on the ISS, or like the last, 23 years now. I think it's been since we had the ISS, right? 1999 or something. So I feel like, yeah, it would have been great to be alive back then to like, witness the birth of like sort of humanity's like, foray into the stars or whatever. But right now is also a great time to be alive because you start seeing all these different companies actually going up into space and like not just talking about it. And more importantly, you are seeing like even governments starting to pay attention. I think like they finally closed better funding for like NASA, I think just like a few months or like even just a few weeks ago, right? And then like the SLS program is like one thing. So I know that like they're saying that they want to go back to like the moon by 2024 and like establish some sort of like gateway to like Mars or something. But I feel like even just getting to the moon again will be like such a huge boost for us, because I don't think it's like a great place for us to just like, just think about what we can do on Earth. I feel like a true civilization that has to expand and like sort of evolve needs to be able to like also explore like its local system as well. Especially because, for better or for worse, we're like sort of depleting our natural resources right now for like whatever reason. So I feel like even just getting up into space and being able to figure out things like asteroid mining and being able to establish like, colonies up there, like on the moon or like someplace else, would be like such a huge boost for us. And also, I feel like I'm really excited about it because I read like a lot of space-based sci-fi. And then like when you see about like, what humanity could be like in like the near future and in the far future, it just makes me like it fills me up with like hope that I really wish that I could see all that happening. I could be a part of it. So yeah, I'm all for this particular like foray into space and like actually going there and staying there this time and not like just coming back or whatever. So yeah.
So you mentioned you read sci-fi and it gives you some hope. Is there any particular books and authors that you like?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually quite a few. So I really like Alistair Reynolds. Have you heard of him?
Alistair Reynolds.
Yeah, yeah,
I
a British
don't.
author.
I think I probably have. I don't think I've read anything
Okay,
by
yeah. So like,
Alistair Reynolds.
yeah, so like he has this book called Pushing Ice, and it's just like it's about like humanity in like the year 2050, and like how they're basically like at the point of like asteroid mining and stuff like that, and then like how like the book sort of like goes from the near future all the way up to like millions of years later. So that's a great read. Apart from that, I really like Ian M. Banks. He's also like a really like prolific author. I mean, yeah, he was a prolific author. So like his series, like the Culture series, is something that's really cool to read because it's about like a far future like humanity, and it's really fun to read. Apart from that, there's also another author that I really like called Peter F. Hamilton. So there's like a lot of like space opera type of books that I read, which are quite fun to read. And then yeah, and even like I guess Andy Weir, I guess like he has like more relatable stuff like the Martian and like Artemis and stuff like that. So yeah.
I have read some Peter Hamilton stuff like uh, Pandora Star and
Oh,
Judas
Pandora Star.
Unchained. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh my God. That's one of my favorite. Yeah. That's honestly one of my favorite books of this. Yeah. Especially Pandora Star. Yeah. It's got a lot of like first contact stuff, right? So it's amazing. Yeah.
and then Andy Weir's The Martian, and then
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard Artemis.
Yeah.
He wrote this book called Artemis, and I really recommend the audiobook, actually. I think the actress that reads the audiobook
Oh,
adds a lot to it. So
okay. Yeah. I mean, I've read Artemis once. It's about like it's about like a colony on. It's like a lunar colony, like basically.
yeah.
Yeah. It's quite nice. Yeah, I'll check it out. The audiobook as well.
So do you remember when you found out that NASA is seriously going back to the moon?
Oh, seriously, going back to the moon? I feel like I'd heard rumblings about it at least like a few years ago, because I feel like the SLS program has been around for like what, at least like 7 to 8 years now. At towards the end of the Obama administration, is like that's when they started like really sort of make some noise. I think just like raise some more funding. So I could be wrong. It could be like before that as well. But I feel like I've heard a lot of this stuff at least like 7 to 8 years ago, and I've heard about like cost overruns a lot. So that's one thing that I keep hearing all the time. But yeah, I feel like at least like a few years ago. It was definitely not a recent thing. Yeah.
So, Artemis 1 scheduled to launch, August 29th. That's the current target date.
Okay. Wait, of
Uh,
this year?
yeah, this month.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. That's the rocket, right? The rocket engine, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the SLS and the Orion. It won't have anybody in it. It'd be just a test flight without
Okay.
anybody, but it'll go around the moon, come back to
Okay.
land. It's a 40-day mission.
Whoa.
Um,
Okay.
and assuming that goes well, then Artemis 2 should launch in 2024. It kind of got delayed from when I started this project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and 4 astronauts should go around the moon, and in 2025, we should actually have people on the moon.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea that the launch date was this close. Must have not been paying that much attention also. So yeah.
Um, how many of your family and friends do you think know that we're going back to the moon?
Oh, I doubt it. Like it's just I don't think, yeah, I very few people I feel like know about this, because I don't think people, at least like people in my circle, aren't as plugged into this kind of stuff like how I am. And I feel like not enough public discourse has been made about this, simply because of the fact that I feel like there's a lot of other stuff that's been happening over the last few years. So I just feel like it's been overshadowed. But yeah, I feel like not enough people know about this. I feel like that should not be the case. Yeah.
And so, if people found out, do you think they would be excited, or do you think they'd be like, "Why are we spending this money to send astronauts to the moon?"
Yeah, I mean that's actually a great question. I don't want to predict what people's reaction might be, but yeah, I feel like it's going to be split along those lines. Like, okay, yeah, it's cool that they're going back to the moon. Like, just call me when I can do something of that sort. Or it's just going to be like, okay, why are we spending this money when we could be doing things on Earth? But I feel like it's just you have to like spend this kind of money, because like even just like figuring out like better technology and how to survive better in like harsh and hostile conditions means like better things for us back here on Earth. Because yeah, I feel like a lot of innovations in the last 50 to 60 years were because of the fact that we had this whole space race and everything. So yeah, there's always some net positive effects for sure. It's not just like these things don't work in isolation. So yeah, I feel like it's a great thing.
So if you were to kind of project 200 years out in the future, and things go optimistically, how far do you think humanity could get in 200 years?
Oh, it's actually that's an interesting question, because I feel like 200 years might feel like a lot right now, but I feel like in the grand scheme of things, it's not very long. So I'm hoping that 200 years in the future, we can better harness the energies and like the resources that we have around us in like a more sustainable fashion. Like you must have heard of like what Dyson spheres are, right? Basically, like when you just like envelop like a star or whatever. I'm not thinking of that, because that's like really advanced, but at least like something that that's able to just like harness like solar energy a lot better than what we can do right now, just like sitting here on Earth, blocked by the atmosphere and everything. So that's my one hope, is that we just get better at just like making use of what we have, because we have like a lot of things around us. And yeah, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm really hoping for like some sort of like FTL, like some sort of faster than light travel. I feel like that's my number one favorite thing to like think about, like what we could do with like FTL. That'd be crazy. Yeah, I'm hoping we can do something of that sort in like 200 years. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny. Electromagnetism is something that we accept as an everyday phenomenon.
Yeah.
Radio, TV, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth headsets.
Yeah.
This idea of having like waves that travel through air and you can't perceive them at all, but we just accept them as
Yeah,
they are.
we just accept their existence. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
We had no idea about electromagnetism before the 1800s. I mean, so that was less than 200 years ago.
I know. Yeah. Oh, that's actually a fair point. Yeah, and I feel like we've definitely made like a lot of progress since then. But I feel like we still have like a long way to go before we can even accomplish like some of the things that I mentioned. But yeah, that's a good point for sure. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But do you sometimes get the feeling that humans feel like we know it all? Like there's not much more to discover? This is it. We got to work with it. There's like no fundamental stuff beyond this.
I don't know. I just feels like there's so many things that at least like I read about on like a daily basis on technical blogs and like different sort of different sort of like scientific journals and stuff like that. But I personally don't feel like it. I feel like it just like, barely scratched the surface. But yeah, I mean that's just me. That's because I have like a strong interest in these kinds of things. So that's my opinion. But yeah, sometimes it does feel like the like people aren't as concerned with like what other things that we could like be doing, we could be like thinking about, we could be like making use of, because they're just like preoccupied with other things, which is like completely fair. But yeah, I do not share that perspective at all. I feel like we have like a very long way to go before we can call ourselves like masters of our universe. But yeah, it's a very long way to go.
And so there's about 8 billion people on Earth, 8 billion brains.
Yeah.
And they're more connected than ever before. What do you think it would take to get more of those brains interested in discovery, invention, exploration, instead of all the other things that they seem to be interested in?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I feel like this is something that's it's like a multifaceted thing, right? Because I feel like different people are like different points in their life, and they have like different needs and everything. But one of the key things that I feel like we should be focusing on as a species is like solving like the base level of problems. For example, I feel like the biggest and the most important thing that we as a society seem to be like drifting away from is the fact that we're not focusing on like educating enough people with like a baseline level of education on certain topics. There's something that we see in the US right now, especially in the current political climate and everything. It's not great to see, because we seem to be going backwards. So I feel like the main thing that we need to like solve first is just like establish the fact that like education needs to be like a right and not like an afterthought, and not like something that's like pay to play. I feel like that's one thing. And the other thing is like we need to solve nutrition for like most people. This is something like this is especially true like in countries like India and like like different parts of Asia and stuff like that, where I feel like we're trying to do that. We're trying to like make food more accessible, and like something people can have like 3 meals a day and stuff. But I feel like we're not devoting enough resources to it, because at like our current production levels, we can definitely feed everyone on Earth every day, like 3 meals a day for sure. It's just that we just don't allocate enough resources to do something like that. So I feel like once you just like start to do stuff for those two things, you sort of like free up people from like a lot of their different problems. Not all of the problems, obviously, because then you have like more evolved problems then. But like I feel like if you start solving at least like these basic issues, you start like free people up to actually think about what they can do now with their life, rather than just thinking about, okay, where do I make my next meal come from? Or like, I don't even know where to begin going about doing something like this. So yeah, I feel like education and nutrition are like 2 really important things that we as a species should be solving for right now, which, yeah.
Well, you say you think education should be more widely available.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so many public schools here in the US, and everybody's required to attend them.
Yeah.
Yet at the same token, I feel like maybe they're not producing the type of learning that's really needed for people to go out there and start inventing, discovering, and prospering.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you felt the same way or felt differently.
I mean, so I was not part of the US school system, like at least not like elementary or like high school or whatever, right? So I only have like an outsider's perspective on this. But like when you read news articles these days about like how the state like directly interferes with the kind of education that we have, especially like in different parts of the US. And this is something that happens in other countries as well. This is something that happens in India as well to a certain extent. It's just that I feel like it's just more covered and like more egregious over here right now. Uh, I feel like if you are constantly just like having this battle between like what's true and like what's right, and it's like sort of like if you don't give enough weightage to science and fact and stuff like that, then I feel like you're just that's not really education. At that point, you just like it's kind of like it's just basically doctrine that's being like issued by someone. So I feel like if you haven't yet come to a consensus on like how exactly you want to teach people, or like whether you want to teach people like fact-based information or just like things that are based on like doctrine, you're never going to have like true education. So I feel like that's something that for some reason we just have seemed to have forgotten, or we're just like purposely ignoring. So as an outsider, like when I read things about like book burnings and things like that in the US, it's not great because I feel like you're just like taking away from the whole fact-based thing, and you're distracting people from like things that are useful to them. And yeah, I feel like that's definitely a problem, and I'm not entirely sure if that's what your question was, but yeah, that's basically what I am seeing now over here, and like the kind of education that's in the US. But like yeah, the higher education for things like college or like your master's degree and stuff like that is still pretty amazing. Like when I was just like in grad school just like 2.5 years ago, and that was honestly like a great experience for me because I got to learn so much more, and I really appreciate the way that at least higher education works here in the US. It seems to be like much more practical, which is great. So yeah.
So if you could, would you take a trip to space?
Oh yes, 100%. Like there's no doubt in my mind for sure. Yeah, 100%. Anytime. So, yeah.
How far would you consider going?
Yeah. I would say obviously this is possible, the moon for sure. And then like if I had to go to Mars or something, that's gonna be an interesting conversation because no one's ever done that before. And there's like a lot of different challenges that come with it. But I feel like I would definitely strongly consider going to Mars at least. And then, if we can if you have the capability to like leave the or like even go like further in the solar system or just like even leave the solar system, I would consider that as well. But yeah, it's been a dream of mine to go to space, so I'm never going to say no to that, like regardless of what happens. So yeah.
Now, on your trip to space, is there anything in particular that you want to do on your trip?
I mean, that's actually I have no idea. I've never thought about what I want to do. I feel like I would just marvel at the things that is just like happening around me, just like observing like blue shift, red shift, and stuff like that, and just being able to be weightless, like in acting like true zero G, I think would be like enough of an experience for me. But yeah, I can't think of anything right now that's like jumping to my mind. But like, okay, I have to do this in space. I would just like love to be free of Earth's gravity well for once. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Now, Elon Musk has a vision of building a self-sustaining city on Mars of about a million people by 2050. And he's
Okay.
developing 100% reusable spacecraft that actually is built and exists here in South Texas. And they plan to do a test launch of it later this year.
Okay.
And the idea of colonizing Mars, having a city on Mars, is maybe something that happens in our lifetime.
That sounds pretty cool.
Would you consider being one of those immigrants?
So have you read this book Red Mars by Kim
Yes.
Stanley Robinson? Yeah, so I mean that's I didn't finish the book, but like I got like almost like 90% of the way through the book, and it's pretty interesting. Like just reading like the entire depiction. I feel like it's pretty realistic, or like fairly realistic about how things would actually go on Mars, especially if you were part of like the vanguard that actually is like the first group of people on Mars or like making that journey. So yeah, that makes me like slightly apprehensive, but I know that I would eventually just want to do it anyway, regardless of like whatever happens. So yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool for sure. I feel like it's doable for sure. Just that we have to like put our efforts towards it. So yeah.
And so I'd like to take that 200-year question and turn it around.
Okay.
So imagine you or one of your descendants immigrates to Mars.
Okay.
200 years in the future, and it's your great 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 granddaughter. She's
Okay.
on Mars in the year 2222, so 200 years in the future.
Nice. Okay.
And she's in high school, and just like high schoolers today take history classes, she's in a history class, and she's doing a project on what it was like in the 2020s. And
Okay. Okay.
she's 200 years in the future looking back at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think will be memorable or worth remembering in 200 years about this decade?
Yeah. I feel like this will be the decade to like sort of, this is gonna be like the make or break decade for us as a species, like, you know, decide whether we want to do something like actually decisive about climate change. Like that's one thing. That's like, I feel like the biggest sort of like filter that we have in front of us right now, or at least the one that I can see. And then the other thing would be like, are we actually serious about becoming like a spacefaring civilization, or even like, you know, making our first moves will be becoming something like that. So I feel like the 2020s will be like defined by those two things more than anything else in my mind. So I'm hoping that she does a book report on that or something. But yeah.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like this is going to be a pivotal decade, but you know, we got off to a rocky start. So
yeah, it's not a great start for sure, but I'm optimistic right now, seeing some of the things that are happening, especially in recent days. So yeah.
Well, Deepak, that is all the questions I had. But if there's something you want to talk about that we didn't cover, is there anything you want to add?
Actually, no. I mean, I feel like we touched on everything that was in my mind that I felt like you were asking me about, and then some more. Like I wasn't expecting the 200 years in the future thing question for sure. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing talking to you, Nathan. I mean, I have been putting this off for a while now, but I'm really glad that I finally did it. And again, I'm really sorry about what happened last time. Like my phone just didn't go off, so I just didn't realize that we had a call then. But yeah, it was really nice speaking to you. Yeah.
No worries. It happens to all of us, and I'm glad that it finally happened. And if you know of anybody else that's willing to have a conversation, I have over 800 more days to the end of 2024, so I definitely could use some help.
Yeah. I'll definitely. I feel like some of my friends would be interested for sure, so I'll let them know.
Okay. Well, you have a good rest of your evening, and thank you again so much.
Yeah. No. Thank you, and I'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.